Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tarot Tapestry. I am joined today by my two lovely co-hosts, Angie and Linda. And just to let our listeners know, Angie is a teeny tiny bit under the weather, so you may not hear her voice as much today as you have on previous episodes, but we are so grateful that she was able to make it today. Today, we're going to be talking about spring. And to start us off, I purchased the Season of the Witch Ostara deck, and I pulled a card to kind of help guide our episode today. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about it. I'm going to tell you what the card is, and then I'm going to read the excerpt from the book. So the card that was pulled is called Germination, which I thought out of all the cards in this deck, to get Germination was just beautiful because and the card is gorgeous. The card is a woman who is upside down and she's under the ground. She's got roots around her. She has a big root wrapped around like her chest, covering her chest area. And she has her feet sticking out of the ground with some beautiful flowers growing out from it. And I thought it was such a beautiful card. And she always gives like a little poem or a little saying or some words under the card, and it says, trust in and fully embrace the emerging path to who you truly are. And I really love that because it like falls in line with me always talking about that authentic self that we're always looking to get to know better. So I thought that was beautiful. So now I'm going to read what the book says about it. Okay. It says, your winter cycle is now over and the ice has melted. The sun is warming more each day and it is safe to sprout and let your leaves unfurl. This card would appear for you when it is time to leave the planning phase and allow yourself to be seen and heard. Working behind the scenes is done. You have gotten far enough to solidify your desired outcome without fear of interference. And I'm just going to stop there because she does go into a bunch more, but I really appreciated what she wrote because I look at spring, or at least the very beginning of spring, as almost like a transition from winter, this time of hibernation and, going within and a lot of this internal work, and spring, like taking action. And I know for myself, it's not so easy to go from being kind of like stagnant and just not as energetic into a full blown, I'm going to take action. I'm going to go, go, go as much as my mentally I want to, because I'm like, yeah, it's spring. The sun is out. It's warm. This is great. I want to go, go, go. I know from years of experience that I can't do that. I need to kind of transition into doing that. And I kind of see this card, explaining that a little bit. Like I've done some planning, and yes, it is time for me to take action, but I need to kind of be careful, maybe how much action I take or the kinds of action I take to make sure that I don't burn out too quickly right out of the gate.
Yeah, like you don't go in your garden and pull up the seedlings and go, why aren't you a green bean yet?
Well, I might do that, Angie, but okay.
But things don't happen quicker because you are impatient for them. They happen as they happen. And I think that's a lovely card to start off our spring season with, because it talks about that. Starting now, this is the plan in action. So, you have to start. You're not going to just all of a sudden be, ta-da, a full-grown apple tree, the day after you plant a seed.
Yeah, absolutely. Linda?
You think about how a baby learns how to walk. most babies don't just, stand up from their crib or their floor on the floor and just walk across the room. They hold on to the first. They stand up and they're a little wobbly, and then they sit back down on their diaper and they stand up again, and maybe they reach for the footstool or they reach for the edge of the couch and they take a step supported by the furniture, and then maybe when in a couple of weeks they get to the edge of the couch and then they take those steps that are not supported by anything, but it's not an immediate, oh, I'm just going to get up and walk. They might want to do that. They might be very frustrated to not be able to do that, but our bodies are such that we have to train our muscles to do those things, and we need time to do it. We can't just stand up and go, oh, boom, there I am.
Yeah, absolutely. So Linda, you did say that you pulled a card from the deck that you've been working on with this
I
month.
did. I did. I try to use a different deck every month just to keep active with the decks that I have, and every deck is different, has a little different, it's a different artwork and different, slightly different interpretations if they go along with the Rider-Waite deck, even if they do, they're slightly different and always get a little more insight. So this month I'm working with the Tarot of Mystical Moments because the artwork and the colors and the mood of the deck to me is very spring-like. It's kind of watercolory and it's just really pretty, and a lot of flowers, and a lot of the artwork is just amazing. It's kind of otherworldly. So for this card, today I just pulled over a card before we got started, ever got connected, and I pulled the star. And the
Oh,
star in this deck is gorgeous. It's a figure. They say it's a male figure. I say it's kind of an androgynous figure. It could be either one. But the image is of the Taj Mahal, and it's kind of sitting on a big plant, almost like a flower. And this figure, who has big dragonfly wings like a fairy, is sitting in front of the entrance and holding like a wand, with a star on it. And the card is kind of green and mauve and a little pink, and there's stars in the sky, and the figure's just kind of looking off into the sky. And it's just very ethereal and kind of just ephemeral. And to me, spring is a little bit like that, when the first shoots come out of the ground, and maybe the crocuses bloom, and then still it might be a little snow and things, weather. And today here in Colorado, where I am, let me tell you, it has regressed. We don't have snow, but we've had an incredible amount of wind over the last couple of days, and the feel like temperature is in the low, like teens and below. So it does not feel like spring at all. And because it's so dry, despite being cold, we have huge fire danger because of the wind and the dryness
yeah.
and everything, and so it's just nuts. And so to see this with the kind of ephemeral beginnings and the hope of the star with the kind of looking off into the sky, thinking what's going to happen, and I just think that it goes along with your card very well. I really do.
Absolutely. And one of the, when I was putting a list together of all the words that I associate with spring, hope was one of them. And I think it's really important to like hold on to that hope that those things that you planned maybe over the winter months or the colder months, that they are going to come true, that you are going to be able to gather maybe that inner strength that you might need to push you forward. And I think honestly, like hope is just a word for me that, has been with me since I, became sober 5 years ago. And it has been like so, what is the word? Inspirational for me. And it has given me, a good way to move forward. Um, yeah, yeah, that's it. Angie, did you want to say anything about Linda's card, or did you pull anything or anything?
I haven't pulled any cards for today's episode, but
Okay.
all of those go together so well. And with the, you know, growing hope, I think that is a good way to think about
Oh, that's
starting to
nice.
bring
The
that. I
growing
like
hope and
that.
being your
And I
own
think,
garden, kind of.
oh,
yeah, because if you've ever planted anything, it could be a garden, it could be herbs in your window pot, it could be just a plant that you get as a gift and decide to plant it as a permanent thing. It's an ephemeral moment when you do that. It's just like, oh, I'm going to put these seeds in the ground. I'm going to put this plant in a bigger pot, and I hope it takes off even more so than it has. And you don't know that it's going to work because even the best laid plans can, you can. I had planted a container garden in an apartment that I lived in a few years ago, and it was doing really well. And the people came
oh
to
no.
spray
Oh,
for
there she
weeds, and they
goes.
sprayed my plants. So yeah, there was that. There it went
Oh,
right there, and I had no control over it. No matter what I told them, like these are vegetables, they're not weeds.
oh
But even
no.
even just spraying around it with the wind and everything, it got on the plants, and so it did them in. But so there's always that chance. So every time you plant something, whether it's an actual seed in the ground or whether it's an idea that you plant in your head or your spirit, it's very ephemeral. It's very there's all kinds of possibilities, but there's always a chance that it can get derailed. So hope is a big thing.
Absolutely. And hope doesn't mean, either that you'll never run across challenges because there'll always be challenges. Challenges
Right,
are,
exactly.
ever
Exactly.
existing and never go away. What I thought I would do, I thought might be interesting is I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna read some of the words that I picked to kind of describe and maybe because there are a few that I'm like, oh, I really, really like this word. So maybe one of these words might, pop up into your head and be like, oh yeah, I really like that. I want to talk about that. Um, so here I go. All right. I have colorful, bright, energetic, movement, momentum, warmth, fresh, newness, growth, expansion, clarity, fresh perspective, balance, renewal of energy, hope, optimism, growth. And then I tried to be funny and I put spring cleaning because I just started thinking of all of these
You
things
know, I
associated with
I was
spring
thinking
cleaning.
of spring cleaning actually as an example, and it's really funny for me because I am not a cleaner. House cleaning, I was raised by a woman who house cleaning was way down on her list of priorities. The house was not a mess. I mean, it was cluttered, obviously. There were four kids and it was cluttered, and she loved her magazines and her things like that. But it was not dirty, but it was cluttered. And she was not a neat freak. And we would start cleaning sometimes on Saturday, and then some old movie would come on TV, and she's like, "Oh, there's so and so, there's Betty Davis, there's all this stuff, oh, this movie," and she would describe it, and then next thing you know, we'd be sitting on the couch, and 3 hours later, we still hadn't done anything. So that was kind of how I was raised, and that's kind of my attitude about house cleaning. So for me to think of spring cleaning as the number one thing, it's kind of funny for me, but I that came into my head because it's like now is the time when you can open the doors, you can open the windows. If sometimes here, I wouldn't do it today because everything would be blown out of the house. But you can. I have an apartment that faces east and west, and so some days I like to open the front door and the back sliding door and just really get a nice cross breeze and kind of blow out the old cobwebs in my brain and the air in the house. Even though we have a good system, it just, when you let the fresh air in, it just has a whole other perspective. And so even that is a way of spring cleaning because you're just letting that old air out from the winter and getting some fresh air into the thing. So I got a card sticking out of my deck here because I was shuffling, so I'm gonna pull it and see what it says. Well, female emperor. The nice thing about this card,
Oh,
or this deck, is that the artist did female cards for the emperor and all of the kings. So there is a regular emperor, and then there's a female emperor and female king of each suit. So this is the female emperor, and she's standing in a courtyard, but she's quite large. She's the size of the buildings, and the other people are very small, and they are connected to her by strands of her long hair. And so I think this is an interesting, she kind of has the strands in her hands. So it's kind of like when you are the emperor, you have control over people. And I think a good way of thinking about this is not so much having control over people, because who really wants that, but to have control over your own actions and your own thoughts and ideas. And springtime, I think, is a really good time to maybe pull out that inner female emperor and say, all right, we've let things hibernate, we've let things marinate in the wintertime, we've taken our time with our own energy, we've tried to renew ourselves by resting and doing that. Now it's time to maybe take control of some of these ideas and bring them out into the germination period that you talked about earlier, and put them into fertile dirt so that they will grow and become the reality that we imagine.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because the Emperor is the card for Aries, and Aries also, we're going into the Aries
That's
zodiac
right.
sign, March. I always forget
April.
if it's the 21st or the 22nd it starts, but it's right around the
Mhm.
spring equinox.
Right.
So
And the
it's
new moon,
very
the next new moon will be in Aries.
yeah, so it's really interesting that you pulled that card to
Yeah, and
signify because
I didn't even think about that. That's really cool. Yeah.
yeah, and I like the emperor because the emperor is like, I always look at the emperor as being somebody who is very strategic, right? Like you really need to be very strategic and plan things out if you're going to rule a whole empire, right? Like you need to have that kind of structure set in place. You need to have people that are, going to be there to support you and to help you, like those resources. But they're also like go-getters, like you could see them say, I want this, go get it for me. We're going to take action, we're going to go, and I like that. For the spring because that's how I feel sometimes. I feel like on a day like it's been beautiful here in New York, Linda. I'm so sorry
Oh,
that the weather
nice.
sucks where you are, but it really has been. And today was gorgeous. It was like 60 degrees.
Oh,
There wasn't like a high wind. And I was walking today and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go and do this and I'm gonna go and do this and da 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 da. And then, I got into my car and I started driving and then I'm like, yeah, I'm a little tired right now. So it's like, what we were talking about earlier, just kind of being like in a transition stage between resting a lot and then now wanting to take that action. But we do see the crocus. They have them right in my front yard. They're these beautiful purple ones. Oh, they are just so gorgeous. And and they've been growing for like about a week and a half now. It makes me so happy to open up my gate and see this garden bed with all of these purple crocus. Everything else is dead, but you just see that and it's like, just like, wow, it's like new life,
it's that
coming,
message.
coming
It's that
into
first
being.
little message of, yeah,
Hmm.
we're still here. We're still alive. We've been asleep for a while, but we're still here, and we're gonna be coming out, and we're gonna be pretty. And I think going back to the Emperor, that sometimes people have a hard time with this card, kind of like they have a hard time with the Hierophant, of being kind of patriarchal, the masculine structure, that kind of thing. Well, one, this is a female emperor, and two, I think when if there's a resistance to the card, or a reaction that's kind of like, you think of something that's a religious, and you get that kind of, I've had religious trauma or whatever it is. I think when you turn it and make it part of you, like, okay, I'm not thinking of this as an emperor outside of myself who's trying to rule me or put rules on me or structures on me. This is something that I can do for myself. I can be my own emperor, my own hierophant, my own guru, whatever. And I can do that for myself. I think it takes a lot of that kind of stigma away from it.
Yeah, and I like that about even like all of the major arcanas, right? They're all archetypes. So
Hmm.
each one of those cards lives within us and
Right.
we have those characteristics and we show them, we exhibit them, we feel them, and I think that's important too for, maybe newer tarot readers is that, and internalizing that and bringing that emperor that is inside of me is a great way too to really learn and embrace the card and have a
Right.
better understanding. Because if you
Right.
can understand how it is for you, Angie, did you put your hands up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's one of the things that makes tarot so great for shadow work is when you see one of those archetypes and you kind of ick about it, it gives you an opportunity to look at that a little bit closer. Like when if you're having an issue with the emperor, maybe you need to look at your relationship with your own authority, like Linda was
Mhm.
saying. So, you can start building your own empire. And there's no better time to do that than in the spring when everything is starting to wake up. This is what New Year feels like to me. That's, new moon in Aries is about when I start feeling like, okay, now it's a new year. Because January doesn't really do it for
Yeah,
me.
I mean,
It's
we
so
celebrate the
cold
calendar year and we have New
brown.
Year's Eve
Yeah,
and count the ball down, and then it's like, okay, let's go back to bed
right, exactly.
for
Yeah.
another 2 months.
Yeah,
I mean, I like the way that you look at it too, Angie. And we have discussed this, a while back where how you look at the seasons and how you like following the seasons is more of how you follow the year and the spring being the new year because it really does make a lot of sense. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a new year in the middle of winter. Like it just doesn't, it just doesn't. But it makes so much more sense to do it in the spring. Like just spring is new beginnings, and that's what a new year is. It's like new beginnings. It's
yeah.
like yeah, I'm going to start getting myself going.
I set
Um,
intentions at the rate at the January 1st. I set intentions for my year, but this is the beginning of the real year, and now I can look at those and go, oh, this is a different, or this is how that has evolved, or I don't want that anymore. You know, so it it does sort of start in January, but it's more like the planning stages. Like your card was saying, the planning stages and the behind the scenes work is kind of coming to an end, and now you're going to start to see the results of what you've done and
yeah,
decide what you want to, because a garden needs protection, like Linda said, um, and you can decide what you're going to let grow and what you are ready to let go of because you're
yeah,
going to start to see
absolutely.
the result of what it's going to be if left.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. And one thing I was thinking about is for myself, when I think about the spring, I get very excited, but I also get very like nervous, apprehensive. And sometimes there's like this spark of fear because it's like I can't hide anymore. Like wintertime, you can hide. In the spring, you really can't hide. I mean, of course you can. You could never go anywhere, right? But the drive and the push to get myself out there in the spring is very strong. And I battle with myself sometimes, for me personally, I have some issues that I work on, like, my weight and, just like all these other things. And to me, the spring is like, now you're going to wear these beautiful dresses and everything is airy and all of these colors. And sometimes it just like frightens me because I'm still working on my own self-esteem, so I get fearful. And then I get fearful of, okay, I've been having these, inner visions all winter long about the things that I want to start. And I've been, planning them and thinking about them and, planning out like what kind of actions I'm going to take. And it's like, oh my God, like now is the time. It has to get done, and it's kind of like, oh, I was really happy when I was planning everything, But now that it comes time to actually doing it, I'm kind of like, ooh, I'm a little nervous. I'm nervous about this.
Yeah, and
Well,
this is when it's still in the teeny tiny stages, you can go, I'm nervous about this because I am, you know, worried what other people will think, or I don't feel confident yet, or anything. And those are things that you can like, who cares what they think? And but you can work on those things. And there can also be instances where you go, I really had fun planning this, but I don't really want it. I've done that a lot. I make,
Yeah. But
you
I think that's
so
also very part of like um it's part of what we do, right? We can make lots of plans. That doesn't mean every single plan that we make has to be fulfilled. Like you make plans, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and that's okay. Maybe it just wasn't meant to happen at this point. Maybe it's something that's meant to happen a little bit later on. So you put it on the back burner, and maybe you come back to it at a later time. I'm sorry, Linda, I interrupted you.
no, that's fine. I was going to say we read questions earlier from was it from the book, the Ostara book, that you had read those three questions?
No, they weren't from the book.
Okay, but you had read three questions, and I thought maybe we could pull cards to address, each of us could pull a card for one question, or we could all put, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I did want to just mention one thing. One of the words that I used to describe spring that just really grabbed my attention was the idea of like a fresh perspective on things. It's almost like that idea of, now the sun is out for a longer period of time. It's shining a little bit brighter. At least here in New York, like the skies can just be clear, and it's it's like you can see things in a different light. It's
mhm.
almost like I look at spring as, um, the sun, and I look at winter as kind of like nighttime, or with the moon coming out and just kind of obscuring things, and maybe you're not getting a really good vision or perspective about what's happening around you. But then the spring comes and things come to life, and now you just have like you're able to see things clear, like you're
Well,
able
that
to
that makes
have
a
that
that makes a lot of
clarity.
sense. And I think also, even when you make plans in the wintertime, or you think about things that you want to do when the weather's warmer, or you have more daylight, whatever is, once it actually starts to happen, and there's been a little time, or a little period of germination, or a little period of hibernation from the time that you envision the idea until the time comes to maybe put it in, it can change. Like you said, the new perspective, you can say, oh, well, I thought I wanted it this way, but now that I see it in a different light, as you said, maybe I don't want it at all, or maybe I want to do it a different way. So a lot of times your plans can change, and sometimes that can create some angst, because it's like, well, I wanted it to be this way, and it's got to be this way. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. You can change your plans if you want to change your plans. They don't have to be.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And you don't have
It
to stress about it, because 2 months have gone by, and now you've thought about it, and it's not exactly what you thought you wanted, and now you can think about something else. It's okay to do that. And I think a lot of us have
Yeah.
have a hard time maybe letting go of that. They think, well, I had this idea, and this is what I should do. And so even though I really don't want it anymore, I guess I feel like I have to do it because I
the
thought about it.
Yeah.
emperors make their own plans. They're
Yeah.
the ones that decide.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we are going to pull some cards for the questions that we talked about in the beginning of the episode. I'm sorry, Linda, you had mentioned about each of us pulling one card and just talking
Yeah.
about
Just
it like
one
that.
for each of us, pick a question. And
I don't
um,
think we read the questions yet, did we?
we haven't,
I
no,
haven't,
I think you read the questions before we started to record. So maybe we need to do
yeah,
that.
I'll read them out to the for our readers, our listeners. Oh, I think I said reader earlier on today.
No, you said
Our
listener.
listeners. Oh, okay. Question number one is what creative or personal aspiration is calling you to take action right now? What is one action that you can take, today or the very near future to kind of help you move forward on your journey? And I think that question kind of pertains to this idea of maybe not having such momentum to do something because you're transitioning from a phase of rest into a phase of action. So, what's something that you can do that can kind of like boost your energy and kind of get you moving? Um, and then the third one was, how can I create balance between rest and action in my life? And that's the same thing because you're not going to go from lying on your couch and watching TV and staying nice and warm to going outside and going to the track and running every single day for miles and miles. There has to be a balance that you work out. Um, so those are the questions. And how shall we split them up? Angie, do you want to do one? I'm just looking at my Zoom screen, and Angie is one, I'm two, and Linda is three.
Okay,
I,
that'll
I
work.
I pulled for number one, what creative or personal aspirations are calling me to take action? And I pulled the death card. So, which is kind of funny because I'm not feeling super great today. But I mean, really, this is I like this card for the beginning of spring because it does it's like spring cleaning. Just sort of let go of everything that you don't need anymore or anything that's ready to be ripped up, repurposed, you know, put brought to an end, however you want to say it. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good card for me for today.
That it reminds me of the spring cleaning that we were just talking
Yeah,
about. Like, what
exactly.
kind of spring cleaning can you do in your life right now? And I don't mean just your home, but just
Yeah.
in life in general. Yeah, I like that. Spring cleaning death card. That's a nice way to look at it. Okay,
We have a thing
number
called Swedish death cleaning.
That's what
It's a
I've been
I
doing
thing,
in my house
yeah,
for the last
which
few
is
years
which
because
is
we've
what
lived
you
here for
do.
30 years.
Yeah, like
And
you clean like you're dying,
yeah,
and you don't want to leave all this stuff behind for people to deal with.
so it
That's
really does
oh,
help you make decisions too about stuff. It's
yeah.
like, well, this maybe is whatever to me, but do I want
But does
want
anybody
my
else
kids
really
to
care
have to
about it?
worry
Right.
about it when
Yeah.
and do I need it in this cupboard for another 30 years? We've lived in this house. We had our whole life here, so it's got
It's
30
got
years
stuff.
stuff. So, but I'm
geez,
getting towards the
Louise.
end of it. Yeah, I am getting towards the end of it. So it's really good. And this death card is just it's a nice reminder. The universe is going, okay, just finish it now.
All right, I got a card that I'm not happy about for what is one action I could take today to move forward on my journey? And I got the Six of Swords. And in my deck, the good fortune, it's the one where the swords are in the ocean and the person is standing on them and they're walking. The first thing that comes to mind is um, s- take it slow. Don't push yourself too hard, you know. And six is also the number itself is one of balance, but don't go so fast, take it easy. Maybe even because it's a swords, maybe even plan out what are some actions that I could take, and then mentally categorize them. Like, what is something that I can do right now that's maybe doesn't require so much energy, and then maybe get rid of some of the other ones, but I think it's just to take everything slower than you may feel like you need to or that you want to because you have this like excited energy to get something done. It's kind of like hold back a little bit before you're ready to go and find that action that's gonna maybe help. Like, okay, if we're going to use this whole, did you say it's the Swedish death cleaning?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to take that as an example, this idea of, maybe start with something that is takes less energy to work on before you move on to something that takes more energy to
Right.
to to
Or in
move
a
on.
small corner or a small
One
shelf
step
unit,
at a time.
step at a
Yeah.
time. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've been
The other
doing this
thing
for probably 2 years.
the other thing
So
that the Six of Swords makes me think of too is that I kind of call it wherever you go, there you are card,
Mm.
because you can always move somewhere. You can go to a different place. You can get away from a geographical area if that's your thing. But unless you change how you approach things or what you're doing in your life, you will end up in the same situations. It will be different people, it will be different things, but it will be a similar pattern because you have not changed anything within. And that's one of the things that I think being in the wintertime gives you time to think about, how did the year be previous go? Do I want these same things going forward, or do I want something different? If I want something different, I'm going to have to change in some way to make that happen, because if I keep doing the same thing, I'm going to get the same thing over again. So,
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that because in recovery programs, they talk about that because some people will be like, I have this problem. I'm going to quit drinking. I'm packing up my stuff and I'm moving. Or I'm leaving the situation because that's what's going to help me. And it isn't, because you're still you, and everything that's right here in your head and all of those problems is going with you. A new change of place, or of your atmosphere or your surroundings is not going to change who you are and what's inside of you.
right.
That doesn't happen. That's not, and maybe
You
that's
have
the
to
same
you have
thing.
to do that. I mean, it could
Exactly.
help. A new environment could help that, because it is different. It's new people. But you still have to be aware that you
Yes.
still have the same way of looking at things, and you still have the same way of reacting to things that people do. And so if you're not willing to change any of that, you're going to end up in the same situations with different
Yeah,
people.
and that goes back to when I was talking about that word, that fresh perspective,
Right.
right? It's being able to allow yourself the chance and the opportunity to see things differently in order to help you maybe change those, unhealthy habits that you've created for yourself that have put you in the place where you are. Um, all
Awesome.
right, Linda, you ready?
Yes, I am. Okay, this seems to be the trend for me today. How can I create balance between rest and action in my life? And I pulled the female King of Swords, which is a really interesting looking card here. It's a woman in a big, fancy kind of ball dress, or you might even look. It almost looks like one of those fancy wedding gowns that you see on Say Yes to the Dress. And she has a crown on her head with a star. She has long, kind of reddish brown hair, just in front of a skyscape with clouds. And she's holding not a sword, but a needle. And the needle is threaded with thread that goes down around her hem of her dress, and it's got like, it looks like those little fairy lights, the little fairy lights that you can put on your windowsill or whatever. And that's what it looks like. But I thought that was so appropriate because of me being a quilter and sewing, etc. And so balance between rest and action, and the sword, the King of Swords, Queen of Swords, all of them being about thought and wit and thinking and planning and that sort of thing, is like my little hamster wheel brain never stops. And so one of the things that I have been working on is, even when I'm lying down and my body is resting, my mind is going, and I can't really turn it off until I'm literally asleep. And then sometimes something will happen and I'll start thinking. And it's not that I'm necessarily worried about things, but it's just like I'll get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and then I'll start thinking about, oh, I should move my shoes in the bathroom so the dog won't see me put my shoes on when we go for a walk and go crazy. Or what did I take things out of the refrigerator for dinner? Or what's in the pantry? Or do I need to go to the bank tomorrow? Or just anything. And then my mind, and it's off and running. It's just boom, boom, boom all the time. And so I think one of the things that I have started to do is either before I go to bed or when I get up, sometimes both, is try to do some of my insight timer meditation about just being calm and just trying to let those thoughts go and not perseverate on them. And when I rest my body, to try to rest my mind as well and to just let it go off. There are certain frequencies, I've discovered this listening to some of these things, is there are certain frequencies that I can play. It's music or just the frequencies, and I can literally feel like a curtain coming down over my thoughts. And so my mind gets calmer and quieter. It's very, I can't describe it any other way. It's just like there's this curtain that comes between the thoughts that are going on and me seeing them in my mind. Sometimes I think visually, sometimes I just think. But this kind of music that I've discovered over the last few years has really helped me in that way. And I think if I can learn how to really rest when I rest, then when I get ready to do something, I'll have the energy that I need, and I won't feel mentally exhausted all the time trying to go do something because my brain just won't shut up.
Yeah, and I think that's a big concern for many people in this country is the mental exhaustion. Not so much physical exhaustion, but the mental exhaustion. And physical exhaustion, I think, is easier to kind of rest. It's easier for you
Oh,
to physically rest your body, but it is so difficult to rest your brain, your
well,
mind, your thinking.
especially if you are in a job where you don't do a lot of physical activity. Now, I used to work in the hotel business, and I worked in one of the busiest hotels in Atlanta because it was right by the airport. It wasn't the biggest, but it was one of the busiest because we had people in and out of there all the time. I was 50 some thousand square feet that I had to and I had to cover constantly because I was a supervisor and I was in every banquet room and everything. And so by the time I got home at night, sometimes 2 or 3 in the morning, because of course I had to work nights, um, I was physically just beat. Went to bed, not a problem. Got up the next day, did it all over again. There was a lot of mental energy doing that too because I had their plans, I had their menus, I had the people, I had all that. So there was a lot of thought that went into it. But because I was also physically tired, I didn't have a problem turning my brain off because my body was like, oh, I got to lie down. And boom, there I was. But Angie and I know from doing the transcription is that your brain is just on fire trying to keep up with this stuff and doing it, but you're sitting in one place just moving your fingers. That's all you're doing. And by the
Yep.
time you do that for 10 or 12 hours, you're exhausted, but your body's not really that tired because you haven't done anything physically. And that can be really, it can be hard to go to sleep. It can be hard, crazy to turn your brain off.
Especially when you're
Yeah.
working overnights. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
But
mean, we
so,
experience the same thing as teachers, it's like mentally exhausted. And yeah, I mean, I'm up and I walk around the classroom, but it's not like,
you're
intense
not lifting
physical.
weights or, yeah.
Yeah, it's not intense or anything. So I definitely feel that. But I wanted to talk to Linda, going back to what you said about that frequency music. And I have really, for the past, say maybe a good 8 months or 9 months, I've been listening to a lot of different kinds of frequency music, trying to find the frequency that I think resonates the most with me for the majority of the time. And it has been so helpful.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're saying to help me clear my mind and not focus on all of the things that are going on, and it's like it it's just amazing how much it does help me calm down. And I have recently, there goes my hand being raised, and I swear to you, I haven't even touched my laptop to turn anything on, and it's there. I don't know what that means,
I
Angie, but that is just weird.
maybe isn't there a setting that it can recognize some of your hand signals? Maybe you were
Oh, I didn't even think
that
about
might
that.
Oh,
be it.
maybe. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
It's
interesting. I'm going to
watching you,
try that
Kate.
one
The
day.
computer
I
is
know.
watching you. Ooh.
That's all right. My Alexis listens to everything that I say. My Alexa, not Alexis, Alexa. Anyway, so I started with, I don't know if you guys know this organization. It's they do health math, heart math. I'm sorry, not health math, heart math.
Oh, I've heard of
Um,
heart math.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my God. So I signed up to receive some free videos that explain what it's all about. And I'm very familiar with it because it's very similar to what we do with our social emotional program that we work at school, the ruler program. But I started working on their heart focused breathing. And it's like, oh my God, what, how amazing it was for me to focus on my heart or the center of my chest and how to bring my breathing and to look at it. And even just the images that came to my head when I was doing that. It wasn't anything about what was going on in my life. It was just images of me being in a space that to me represented my heart center and the feeling of just warmth and calmness and relaxation. And it was like, oh my God, this is like a beautiful place to be, and I would get like a thought that would come into my head. And then I would just go back to that beginning, focusing and breathing into my chest. And boy, was that just amazing.
Yeah.
I
Amazing.
mean,
That's why
I think
breath is so
these,
important in yoga. That's, you
yeah, and
know,
I think these days this kind of thing is so it not only important, it's critical. It's
Mhm.
critical that we learn how to disengage from all of the angst and rotten things that are happening. Even if we're involved in it during the daytime, we have to be able to disengage at some point and have some time away from it, because that kind of angst and worry and global just discomfort and discontent, it can, if you, it can really weigh you down. And we're not yet living in it day to day the way some people are, and I'm very grateful for that. But the thought of it coming possibly is, it can be almost worse, because when you anticipate, they talk about torture. I've read studies about torture. It's not the actual torture that's so bad, it's the anticipation of the torture
Mhm.
that engenders so much fear and terror into people, because they don't know what's going to happen and they think the worst and everything. So it's almost like worrying about it and thinking about it and thinking what could happen is worse than things that actually happen, because then you're in the middle of it and then you just have to deal with it. But
Yeah.
so I think learning how to do that and taking some time every day to do that, however you do it. But again, I started listening to the sleep music years ago, when I was still with Glenna. So this has been maybe 15 years. Um, and I found this one CD that said it was Sound Sleep. And it was 59 minutes of just nothing but that music. And it was just kind of chords. And I thought, oh, what does that even mean? But I was so desperate to sleep because I was working overnight and I couldn't. And then I would try anything. And so when I did, it was like, wow, this really works. How odd. And so since then, I've been really working on the different, like you, with the different frequencies and the different kind of things for breathing. And so, and I can't measure it because I don't have any kind of a machine or whatever, but I know it works for me. So, I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people
You
might
absolutely
poo-poo it,
know.
but it
Yeah.
works. That's all I can say. It works. Yeah.
You know when it works for you. And I
Yeah.
have to say, I do the meditations for the symposium, right, for the new moons.
Yeah.
And I've really been using like and I want to say inner visions, because I do feel like we all have our inner visions, and that's
Sure.
everything, the things that we want to happen in our life, right? Um, and I have been using that with I tested myself. I tested myself visualizing parts of the meditation and how I want to refine them, right? By closing my eyes and going into the meditation myself. And I find that the frequency music just makes it more vivid, more clear, and it just flows better. Like it's almost like my mind is bringing me into these different environments, and just like it's amazing. Like I can't even describe it, and it sounds a little freaky, like I'm listening to myself say it, and
I
I'm like,
don't think it
but
sounds
I,
freaky at all. It's
oh,
very
thank you.
I mean, it's
practical.
amazing what
Art show.
the mind can do without drugs
Yeah.
under the
And
right stimulation.
we've all been very socialized to accept judgment or to-do lists or acceptance, whatever, from the outside. And these practices show you that you are internally resourced. That's all in
Oh,
you. It doesn't matter. And these practices, like I do yoga, I do Kundalini yoga is my main uh, practice, and these frequency music and tarot cards, anything that gets you in touch with yourself and leads you to yourself is going to lead you to good places. Like Kate's, when you go into these meditations yourself to refine what you want to say, the best way to teach is from your own lived experience. And these little tests that you do, faith, healthy faith, can be questioned. Like you can say things like, am I making this up? And so you try it without, and then you try it with, and you're like, wow, this really does work. So you have faith that you can keep going down that path and probably find even more success or different kinds of, you know,
Yeah.
things to think about. But yeah, that's
yeah.
a great,
My little female king of swords just took us off on a path, but yeah, I mean, I think that the balance, again, going back to the question, the balance between rest and action has a lot to do with learning how to actually rest completely. You can lie down and rest your body, but if your brain is still going 90 miles an hour, you're not going to feel rested when you get up.
Yeah, when you, for this is changing the topic completely. I'm going to go to a gory, not so maybe mental picture nice. When you first showed the King of Swords, my first thought was all work and no play makes Johnny a bad boy or a bad whatever. And you know, when he's from the
Oh
movie,
yeah,
and I
all
was
work and
like,
no play makes Jack a dull boy. Yeah, and
Jack
then
a dumb boy,
yeah.
yes. And
I'm
that's
home. Yeah, that.
that was the first image
Here's
that
Johnny.
came. Yes, that was the first image that came to my mind. And I'm like, oh,
Well,
why go there?
she is kind of shiny.
But they talk a lot about too, the balance between like um, work and play. It's kind of
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
same philosophy. You have to find just balance between um all things in
Yeah,
life, and once you start to work on, say, finding that balance, like maybe right now you might be working on creating balance between rest and action. As you start to develop those skills, all the skills that are involved in doing that, right, from planning it to practicing it to refining it, the more that you do it, the more then you can then apply it to other parts of your life, other areas where you're looking for balance.
right.
It becomes just a little bit easier to attack, um, those areas and do that. So everything has a benefit for future ventures, for other things that
For
you're
future
gonna
you.
do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, this was a wonderful episode. And, I hope our listeners, um, got a lot out of it. And maybe, you might want to start thinking a little bit about what spring means to you and how you can bring some of those themes that you might come up with into, your life moving forward, and how those themes and the cards can really help to guide you on this journey through through the spring season.
Maybe they can embark on their own version of Swedish death cleaning.
Yeah.
There you go. I will not, but maybe others will. Okay.
I'm just really excited that mine is almost done.
That's awesome.
After many, many years, several failed attempts.
You refined your skills,
Exactly. And
Angie.
the more you walk that path, the easier it gets.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely. All right, ladies. Well, you have a wonderful week, and we'll see each other when we see each other.